just working through this thought of discipline, the pathway to growth, is what I labeled it. Okay, so do you think, you just heard all of these different desires. One was not, it was not just a uniform thing. Nobody got together and, hey, we're going to all, and, we're going to do it. These are all different thoughts from different people that, either the Lord has impressed upon them. It wasn't, I don't believe in chance, so it wasn't happen chance. It was something that was heavy on their hearts, and it was a desire of theirs. And so they just verbalized that desire. Do you think, what's the probability that 40 pounds, that mile, that praying about things more fervently, is that going to happen automatically? Are you going to be able to have your cake, no pun intended, and eat it too? And, continue to eat what you've always done and think of a different result? Is that, we're all fairly smart individuals here. No, of course not, right? There's going to have to be some level of discipline, right? You're going to have to curb something to have something else. And that's kind of what we want to think about this morning. There was one guy, Chai Rodriguez, put it this way. He said, preparation through steady practice is the only honest avenue to achieving your potential. This guy said in an essay for aspiring writers, first, forget inspiration. Habit is more dependable. Habit will sustain you, whether you're inspired or not. Habit is the perseverance in practice. And I like that. Everything becomes a habit, right? Now you can go a little bit deeper than that, and drinking is not necessarily a habit, it becomes an addiction. But if you do it long enough, it becomes habitual. And you get results from this consistent, concerted effort. Discipline is habitual as well. You see people, I was watching probably one of the most disciplined people that is out there today is a ex-Navy SEAL, David Goggins.
Yeah, I was just watching.
Did you watch that? The running?
Ago.
Yes.
Running 100 miles.
Unbelievable. Yeah, and his wife is, Dave and I share a lot of the same videos. His wife is in this car. It's like 2-something in the morning, and he just got this wild hair that he was going to run. I think it was 100 miles or something like that.
Just got done working out.
Yeah.
Go run 100 miles.
He decided to just run 100 miles through the whole entire night, not stopping. And he is so driven. And would you say that it is because he's gifted? He's, I think, the only man who went through Navy SEALs school. Every other person and got a second chance and passed it. Only person in United States history. So is he gifted? Is he disciplined more than you or I? Or is his desire so strong to not allow lethargy and laziness? If you look at pictures of him, he was like almost 300 pounds. He is so deathly afraid of being there that he disciplines his body, and we'll look at that. He puts it under subjection to have the results that he wants. I would say it's because his desires are he is so passionate about reaching these goals that he has that he will do literally anything to get there. And then you take that down to your average person who, well, when they feel like doing something, they do it. But it's not concerted. It's more than likely accidental. Dave brought up, first of the year, everybody's in the gym, you're pumping iron, everybody's smiling and laughing, and, no sweat, no nothing. It's just everybody's having fun. And then, 60 days later, there's nothing going on. A long time ago, we used to work, I was in a group of people, a financial group, and we used to go in 90-day madman cycles. And the theory was anybody can do anything just full bore for 90 days. Then you just kind of fall off, which is 3 months, which is a quarter of the year. And so people get all excited and all this and that, and then the emotions come in, and then they fall back into their old ways. And we don't want to do that. Not when it comes to this unbelievable thing that God has given each one of us, which is a mind. Discipline, the Greek word translated for discipline, comes from the root word krat, which denotes power or lordship over oneself. Self-discipline means exercising power over oneself. It is the ability to keep our inner desires, thoughts, actions, and words under control. Each one of us, we may verbalize things, but you realize that your self-talk is louder than your verbalization. I may go hours without saying anything, without talking, but my mind is just racing, right? Of thoughts and words, and each one of us can attest to this. Some people have very, very negative self-talk where they just beat each other up, beat themselves up, not each other. There's a war going on in their mind between what could be and what was. And they always gravitate back to you'll never be this and you'll never be that. And it's sad because there's so much potential and opportunity there. And they succumb to themselves. There's no external force but themselves. Discipline is the bridge between goals and accomplishments. Success is created through the performance of a few small daily disciplines that stack up over time to produce achievements far beyond anything you could have ever planned for. Failure, on the other hand, is just as easy to slip into. Failure is nothing more than the inevitable outcome of a few small acts of daily neglect, performed consistently over time so that they take you past the point of no return. It's the small stuff, right? It's the little things. I read a book years ago, it was a great book called The Dash. And it's when you were born and when you die on a tombstone. And it's this little dash that everybody has, and it's your life. And the whole thought behind this whole book was, what are you doing with that little dash? That's the only thing that you've been given. We're not guaranteed tomorrow, and yesterday has already passed. And some would argue today is all we have ever. It's the here and now. There's a big movement right now of this consciousness, and all we have is today, and that's it. And if you think about from an eternity standpoint, that's all the Lord has is today. It's just one one sequential thought of time. And that's all we have. And that's the Friday night game. That's the opportunity that we have to develop and instill things and ultimately go after all of these desires that we have.
There was a good thought. You always think of God as eternal. But how about thinking of him as always present?
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, there's just one continual time span for him.
Right.
It's the present tense.
Right.
He's been present and has always been present in every chapter of time.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting thought.
Yeah, and he sees, this is how he can see the end from the beginning, because he's not stuck in time like you and I. He already sees both bookends. So yeah, that's amazing. And I'm going through this very slowly. I have a lot of material and we got multiple weeks to do this. So when the time's up, the time's up. So we're just going to kind of work through this. And if you guys have a thought, be sure and bring it out. A couple other quotes. I'm kind of a quote guy. Small disciplines repeated with consistency every day lead to great achievements gained slowly over time. And that's good old John Maxwell speaking these words. We must all suffer one of two things: the pain of discipline or the pain of regret and disappointment. Jim Rohn. And Mom would always say, from a health standpoint, and this is true, you can use this in anything in life. You can pay me now or you can pay me later. Either you're going to pay yourself now by curbing a couple things, Luke, not having pop 1 week out of the month. That is a discipline, right? That's going to, you can go down the rabbit hole with the dopamine and the endorphins and how great it feels to have sugar and all this other stuff. But he's going to curb that appetite and train himself, his body, of what he's used to getting and say, no, you're not going to get that this time. This week, you're not going to have that because this is stronger than the desire for the pop, ultimately. We're going to curb this. In fact, we're going to do something else. I know he's not going to do anything for a week. So he's going to take that no pop and he's going to replace it with something else. Seltzer water, energy drink, tea, something, coffee, something. He's going to replace that, and the body over time is going to say, all right, well, I guess you're in charge. And so it's going to succumb to whatever his discipline is. And that's going to be a trajectory. He's going to launch from what he did last year, and he's going to go in a different trajectory than where he was last year, and he's going to have a different outcome. 100% he will have a different outcome from different habitual decisions that he makes every day. So what is life? When you look at life, and we speak a lot about as believers, we have to be careful about this, but I also don't want to be irreverent when we say, well, this is the day that the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad with that. And I take that 100%. It is the day that the Lord has made. But the Lord has also given you opportunities, right, and raw materials that you can take whatever day is given to you. And in your mind, you can make it the best day that you possibly could ever have. And yet that other person can have the same thing, the flat tire, the bald tire that, he, again, habit, decided not to change the tire and had a blowout on the road. And he can curse God with the same exact opportunity. And so there is some truth to both sides of this. But what is life? Does it happen to you? Or do you make life happen? Right? Things fall on the good and the bad alike, right? Job talks about that. Things are falling. And if you listen at Viktor Frankl, not David Hansen, Viktor Frankl, he'll say that nothing in life has a meaning but the meaning that you give it. Do you believe that? How can two individuals look at the same exact thing and one person is giddy about it and the other person is cursing about it, right? So we've been given these opportunities. We've been given these desires. We just heard them. And we've been given a mind, an unbelievable supercomputer that can turn desires into physical items, physical things that you and I can benefit from. Do you think that if some of these goals, this is why goal setting, Dave did a great job on this, is so important, because it sets you in a trajectory, right? We just talked about rockets earlier. If that rocket is off course with that amount of thrust and that amount of momentum, it's not a game of inches, it's a game of thousands of miles, potentially, right? Because the heading is off. Aaron understands flying and things like that. If you've got a fuel load and you're not on course, well, you're gonna run out of gas. You're gonna have all sorts of emergency situations that need not have happened. But because of poor planning, poor goal setting, poor desires, it puts you in a situation where you have to make crazy decisions that shouldn't happen. So does life happen or do you make life happen? I would argue that you make life happen with your mindset, with your emotions, with what you want to do, which is with what you should do. You define and create the life that you've been given. Now, is God over all things? Yeah, absolutely. But has he given raw materials to you just like he has me? Yeah, no doubt. Do some people have the wind at their face and some people have the wind at their back? Yeah, no doubt. But can anybody change the trajectory of their life? Is there anybody here that thinks that they're just fixed and, throw goals out the window and whatever will be, will be? I don't see that in life, because you can get literally Pat had a 20-pound weight loss by just being sick. That's just a couple days worth. So if that trajectory stayed on, what would be the outcome, with concerted effort? If he got some thrust under his belt, and started enjoying this and getting some of the feelings of that, well, it would set him in a whole nother course. He may actually have to change his trajectory because he's going to overshoot it.
Like to quote Chris, one that always I repeat to myself is, whether you think you can or whether you think you can't, you're both right. It doesn't matter, like, what are you deciding to do it?
You're right.
A choice doesn't matter.
Yeah, you're right. Absolutely. Okay, so that's one question that you guys can think on of what life is like and what does it do. Is it a series of decisions? In the Bible, you see all kinds of words that speak to this. Plans, course, desires, steps, all of these different things. There are ways to accomplish life, and ultimately the steps are made straight by the Lord, right? A man plans his ways, and the Lord directs his steps. Well, who's planning his ways? Well, you are. I am, right? You're sitting down at some point saying, all right, it's January 1, and what are we going to do with this year? It's just an open book. We don't even know if it's promised to us, but Lord willing, if it comes to us, what are we going to do with it? Are we going to blow up to 350 pounds, or are we going to trim down to 210 pounds? Are we going to blow our savings? Or are we going to have a healthy emergency fund? Are we going to plan accordingly with our time, or are we going to invest it in whatever else? Just fill in the blanks. These are all concerted investments that will always bring a return. It may not be the ROI that you're interested in, but it will bring a return on investment. Nothing is static in life. Nothing is just neutral where it's like, well, I invested all this and I got zero in return. You either got a negative amount or you got a positive amount, but nothing is neutral. And so we need to take this seriously. You need to take this goal setting, not that January 1 is something important, but this life that you've been given, this mind that you've been given, right? These faculties that we have, this country that we live in that affords us freedoms and opportunities to literally change your life in an instant. Tony Robbins says, change is automatic, but progress is not. We can all change in a moment, for good or for bad, but do we progress year over year? Well, as a believer, again, I'm speaking only to believers here, I would hope so. I don't see how you could not progress, right? We're going to look at the energy source, the power source inside of each one of us, which is not limited for you and maximized for me. It's all the same. It's the same Lord. It's the same Holy Spirit that we'll look at. How can you not have progress in your life with the raw materials that we've been given? Proverbs 16:9 says, in their hearts, humans plan their course. This is so dumb. I wanted to do ESV, and it made all of my verses NIV, which I don't like NIV. So these words are a little different, so pardon me for that. But in their hearts, humans plan their course, but the Lord establishes their steps. We just talked about that earlier. And so the Lord is ultimately the one that is going to take your raw material, these things that really, I would say, he's given you, this mind, right? That things enter and exit and come in. And he's gonna allot something to you. And what are you going to do with it? You're just going to let it go in one ear and go out the other? You can say, that is an impossibility. No, there's absolutely no way I could ever accomplish that. And you've heard this very trite quote, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Everyone is given a single step, right? We all can do that. We got faculties. We may have weak knees, but we have knees nonetheless. We got legs. We've got intellect. We've got each other, right? That can shoulder one another. Everyone is capable of something of benefit to someone else. And ultimately, it starts with one word: why? Why should you change? Why would you change? Who benefits from that? So first, there is a desire and a goal, but how is it made manifest? How do we take what has never been and turn it into what is? That is a superpower, right? That is an unbelievable opportunity that we have. That if you got around the right person, you could turn an invention, you could turn a thought, you could turn anything into an action that ultimately has an outcome that changes your trajectory. It's an unbelievable opportunity that we have. So what is it? How is discipline created? How can you look at one person that seems to never succumb to discipline or hard work or self-control, and you almost envy him because there is no self-talk. There is no dialogue. There is no internal, oh my goodness, I don't want to do that because of this, and this, and all this other stuff. And then you see someone else who has paralysis of analysis, and by the time the year is over with, we'll just use that as there's no outcome. There's no activity. There's no progress. It's nothing but self-talk. And ultimately, it just locks them in their resolve. And you do that year over year over year over year, and you wonder why you don't have progress, right? We weren't born at 300 pounds. We weren't born multimillionaires. We weren't born physically with all of this prowess that we have. These things are developed. Some of it is by experiences, by society, and most of it is us with how we interact and things that we do. So how is discipline created? If you were to focus and have self-control till the end of the endeavor, what would your life look like? What would it look like if you dropped 40 pounds? What would it look like? And this is the sell the sizzle. You got to sell the sizzle to yourself. You got to sell what it's going to feel like. You got to sell all of these things. Otherwise, you're not gonna indulge in it. There's no reason why you would put yourself through all sorts of pain and difficulty, intermittent fast and all this other stuff if the outcome wasn't worthwhile. We're pretty smart individuals, right? We work off of this premise of laziness. We're really good at doing a lot with a little. And if we can just kind of work on that to where we can get a lot done without having to put a whole lot of effort in, we'll do it all day, every day. And that's kind of a cool thing, right? Because we don't have to develop ourselves and go work all this time. We can get good results with very little tweaks, right? It's called biohacking, right? With just doing little things that can allow us to get great results. And when that dopamine hits, well, guess what? We're going to do another result. We're going to do another result. Before you know it, we've got this unbelievable outcome that started with just a thought in our own mind. So how is it created? How can you have self-control till it looks like? Is discipline tyranny or is it freedom? This is probably one of the most important questions that you need to answer, and answer once in your life. Is it drudgery? Is it tyranny? Is it, because with that outcome, that mindset, guess what? Your mind is going to work to prove yourself right. It is going to say things. It's going to act in accordance with how you think. right? That's the way our mind works. It happens from the inside out. All of our things that we see in our lives, I'm not talking about like right now, I'm talking about the quiet times of our lives are the way we think. And we're going to talk about, as men in a couple of weeks, out of the mouth. All of the things that we see in our reality today are because of how we think inside, from a purity standpoint. This is so important because reality is really here. It's not out here, right? We just talked about how this is all neutral. It's here. As Aaron says, whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. One person will say, yeah, absolutely. Let's go. Hook me up. Let's do it. The other person says, nope, never. Never in 1,000 years. And then you wonder why they're at different places. So I would think that self-discipline, and for me, my interpretation is it brings freedom because you don't have to think. You don't have to ask yourself whether you feel like doing it or not, right? You do it because, well, my goals demand that I do it. If I want to have this outcome, I have to work back to doing this, and this. Pat's not going to wake up one day and run a mile. He can't. If he could have, he would have, right? So past is not a thought of prior events, but it's a pretty good indicator. So he's going to have to do something different, a few things different, to be able to have that goal. And that's something that we can help him with, right? So when we see him indulging in all sorts of different things, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to think, is he going to be able to run a mile doing that action? More than likely not. And so I would think that Pat would probably appreciate some encouragement on that. Not constructive criticism, not criticism, but hey, you remember that goal of a mile? You think you're going to be able to accomplish it doing what you're doing? No, probably not. You know, just little things to just bring us back on course and allow us to accomplish what we want to.
Because I've always thought of discipline as doing what you want most versus doing what you want now. I think after work, we all want to go home and watch TV and sit around, but that's not what you want most. Or Pat says running a mile, so he needs to go walk.
Right.
It's not what he wants now, but it's helping him manifest who he wants most.
Wait till you get 58. Watching TV might be what you want most.
Well, then we need to go have a message on goal setting.
Yeah.
Well, Chris, along your other line I thought there's a difference between constructive criticism and destructive criticism. If you come to me and say, hey, you're looking at this goal and you're doing that's not going to help, but you're just never going to do it.
Right.
That's destructive criticism. It just kind of tempers in me this idea that now I'm not going to do it. But if you come to me and say, hey, you can do it, not like that. That's a little bit, it's more constructive, that it encourages me, it helps me, not makes me feel,
That's a good point. Do you know what's inside of a person? Do you have any idea? What's inside of them is different than what's inside of you. Now, yeah, we're endowed with our Creator and all of these things. We're created in His image and all this stuff. But do you actually know the octane, I'll use that analogy, that is inside of that person that could light that fuse and send them off? You don't. Neither do I. So it behooves us to not suppress somebody's desire, but to fan it, right? If it's for good to society, to himself, to, just you give the definition, why would you not encourage that, right? Just because you think you can't has no bearing on whether he thinks he can, right? This is self-talk. You can't look inside of a person. If somebody says, if Dave says, well, I want to make $1.5 million this year, would it be profitable for me to say, you'll never do that? And that might light his fuse, actually.
Yeah, I was going to say that might.
But if I continually, dripping faucet, I just keep eroding away at that idea. Certain personalities kind of trump that, but that might demoralize somebody to the point where they will never do it, ever. And if given the opportunity, they'll push it away subconsciously because they don't think they can. They don't think, no, it'll never happen to me. Nope. If you knew where I come from, all this talk, that's self-talk, right? It's demoralizing, detrimental self-talk, right? And you're not going to do something that is different than what your nature is. If you think you're this way, you're not going to become somebody different, right? Our minds are like rubber bands. They come back to homeostasis, right? What we think about ourselves. This is why it's so important to take this energy source, this muscle, and to stretch it, right? To think outside of who you were a couple years ago. I was different at 18 than I am at 39, right? Dave is different at 58 than he was at 48. These are these are all that we're constantly evolving, and so your mind has to evolve as well. And so we need to be very careful of that. Who gives self-control in life? Is this something you just shoot it in your arm and you ultimately got self-control? What does the Bible say about this subject, and how can we have more of it? How can we harness the unlimited potential of our mind and will to accomplish things that before the desire or goal was but just cruising through life? Just, whatever happens, if I get a raise, if this or that, these are all things that you can't control, right? The only thing that you can control is what's between your ears. That's the only thing. You can't control me. I can't control you. Sure as heck aren't going to control your wife. You're not going to be able to control your job. Nothing, right? If I willed it to happen, I don't think I'm going to make the snow stop, right? That's what's been dealt, right? And things are dealt in our lives. What are you going to do about it? You're going to take this raw material, you're going to take this sand and lime and water and turn it into mortar and build a building, or are you just going to spin your tires? You're just going to be frustrated at, man, I wish I had something else. That guy over there. Yeah, go ahead.
I don't know if you have this verse, but Proverbs says, "For whichever man thinketh, so is he."
Yeah, I don't know.
In his heart, so is he.
Yeah.
So, that's, even the Proverbs say that. So.
Yeah, very good. Yeah. So we got to be very careful about this self-talk. We got to be very careful about this raw material. First, you got to take inventory of what you have available, right? And have goals that are in line with what you have. And then we have to go out and actually do something about it. It all starts with the why. If you have a why big enough, you will be able to overcome any how, right? Thomas Edison had a why that he was sick and tired of the oil lamp. And he decided to turn these little electrons into alternating current that ultimately lit a bulb, and we haven't deviated from that. It's still electricity, right? We got LED lights, but if you look at Thomas Edison's real inventions, most of them were in power generation. The incandescent bulb was just really the one that everybody talks about after his 1,000 or whatever inventions. And that went away relatively quickly. We got better and better and better and things like that. But the alternating current, way better than DC current, that's what's held true to today in the 21st century. That was his invention. It started with the why, sick and tired of this, and the how became inevitable, and he ultimately overcame it. That's what we're interested in. Discipline is not willpower. Don't think for a second that it is. You don't just, because that burns up fast, right? You cannot be under load, under pressure, under weight for long periods of time. Yes?
A good example of willpower versus discipline is, you're just trying to parallel, but when you are on the ground, the wind is blowing. I cannot overpower that wind. I have to finesse it, and I have to have the discipline to know how to turn it into the wind the right way. I've tried to fight the wind and pull it down, and I can't get it to it. So that's one of the differences between that willpower. I can try as hard as I want. I'm
Right.
not fight that wind until I know that I know what the wind needs to do, and I can discipline it to do it.
Yeah. So you harness this energy to benefit you versus basically take away from what you're trying to accomplish. Yeah, that's good. That's a good analogy. Yeah, we both get it. Sorry about you guys. People do not lack strength; they lack will. We're all strong with the definition. They lack the desire, the willpower, right? They'll want to. You see a society, a generation that doesn't want to do anything. They don't. They want to have, but they don't want to give. They don't want to become uncomfortable. They don't want to think outside the box. They don't want to, and some of these things, you can still live a good life over that. I don't want to be a hard worker as a ditch digger, right? You're not going to accomplish anything. You don't want to work hard at the right things. But when it comes to working hard on your mind and your willpower and your desires, nobody wants to do that anymore. We want the easy road. Well, you're going to have an easy goal, an easy outcome if you have an easy road. It's going to take some level of effort. It's going to take some discipline, right? You're going to have to forego something else to have what you want over here. And there's just no easy way around it.
Chris, you brought up Viktor Frankl, but in The Man's Search for Meaning, he talks, he was a doctor, so he was very smart. Those that had a why, seeing their wife and kids, they were able to withstand, and most of them lived. Those that had nothing, they died off as soon as it got tough, as soon as they were hungry and cold, and it's just crazy the distinction between those two.
I got two more sentences here and we'll end. Waiting to do something until you're fully ready is the wrong way to live your life. We spend so much time waiting on all of the stars to align, right? To use this analogy, for everything to be perfect, where we can, oh, yep, there's the outcome that we want. Okay, is it cloudy? Is it sunny? All right, let's get on it. And then, it peters out. We don't ever get anywhere. The desire should dictate the trajectory, and whatever happens in the way is white noise, right? We focus more on the white noise than we do on the outcome, because our priorities, again, feels right, emotions, and we'll look at that in a couple pages. Desire, emotions. What are you doing listening to your emotions? They lie to you, right? They tell you you're skinny when you're fat. They tell you you're rich when you're broke. They tell you that you're this when you're not. They're fickle. They're not a good reference point. Do you have some non-negotiables in your life? Have you drifted away from what you told yourself and possibly others of what you set out to do? Whose fault's that? Is it mine? No, it's not my desire. It's yours. It's your responsibility. This non-negotiable that you're all excited about, January 5th, fades into oblivion by the end of the month. Right? All of these things, right? Because you don't write them down. You don't have them in front of you. You're not constantly absorbed with it in a good way. You're going to be absorbed with something. How about be absorbed with a desire that's beneficial? It becomes a negotiable. Well, I'm not going to run because it's snowing outside. But as soon as it gets to 63.5 with the barometric pressure at less than 29, so it helps my joints, then I'll do it. Well, you're never going to do it. It's never going to happen. And you're just selling yourself on a lie. Are there some things you're not willing to negotiate on? What brings that about? Well, it would be deep desires and goals, right? An opinion that is so strong, a belief about who you are or what you're trying to accomplish, or your family tree, or your physical, your natural tendency of if you didn't stay on the gas, where you would be, right? You had that thought. I've had that thought. If I don't get after it and stay on the gas and pump the brakes, the inevitable slide down the hill, where does that show up for me? What is the main robber of the desires coming to light? Our feelings. Our feelings are the number one thing that either detract or bring about the desires that you have. And those are whose? Not mine. They're yours. That's on your game field. That's something that you can control. What about all those good things? What about all that excitement? What about all of the passion and all of the stuff that you had early on? And then with like a few little surges of self-talk, it just disappears. Reading books, losing weight, all of these things. There's emotions and there are feelings, but there is a whole other level to getting what we want to accomplish, and it's built on convictions. And I'm going to stop there because we're out of time. But think about some of these things, some of these non-negotiables. Again, we're gonna work. Pat, you may have even more time. We're gonna work through some of these things, and we're gonna kind of take some introspection in ourselves from a positive standpoint. We're gonna find out, well, why did we not accomplish what we set out to accomplish? Why 5 years ago did it just not stick? Was it the environment? Was it the president? Was it this or that? And the quicker we can take control of what we're responsible of, the quicker we're gonna have some results. If I was holding Dave captive for why my bench press wasn't where it should be, I'll never have the opportunity to increase it, right? Because he is in charge of that. But if I take control of it and say, well, okay, if I do this and I do this and I do this, and if I work 3 days a week, and if I limit this, and if I have my weight go on this, well, then I'm going to have results. And now it's my responsibility for the outcome. And so we need to be careful about that. So the first point we'll go on when we look at this next time is self-discipline comes from God. And we're going to look at what the Bible says and then just kind of start working through it. Yeah, go ahead.
A lot of people say, Christians say, the power of positive thinking and everything else, but there's so many verses that has to do with this. And I think of 2 Timothy 1:7, where it says, for God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and a sound mind. Sound mind and power, and love. And that's a powerful verse, for all the things we do. And so, to say the power positive thing and all this, I think, the Lord lays it out for us here as well.
Right.
He's given us this opportunities.
Right.
Whether we get steward of it or not, do we take these opportunities instead of discipline?
Yeah, don't sell yourself on what you have in here. I mean, this is in cars, they call this a sleeper, right? If you see like a minivan and it's got 1,000 horsepower engine of it, underneath it, they'll say, well, that's a sleeper, because you don't know, right? We don't know what's inside of us. You got a little inkling, but you really don't know. I mean, have you turned the knobs to it and found out just what you're capable of? And yeah, okay, I understand you get kind of tired when you get older and things like that, but you still have potential, right? This is kinetic versus potential energy. This is stuff stored up. You're going to to use this analogy, you're going to let your batteries waste away, or you're going to put a charge to them, right? You're going to invigorate them, because there's people that are counting on you. There's people that are counting on you, me, you, right? We all have our little influence circles and spheres of influence, and you can't give what you don't have, right? You understand that. You're not going to pull something out of thin air and expect to give it to somebody else. I'm not going to listen to it. If you're not doing it, I'm not going to, talk is cheap. And so we need to be careful about what we are doing.